Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Money and Mindset Podcast. I'm Sheryka Alford here with.
Anntricia Bray Smith.
Today, we have the pleasure of having special guest Kathy Lee to joining us. She is the creator of the blog babyboomersupersaver.com, which focuses on creative ways to catch up on retirement savings, even, if we jump off to a late start. Kathy, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Anntricia and Sheryka, it's very exciting to join you on the podcast.
Thank you. Now, in the past few episodes, we've been talking about the financial obligations and what that looks like according to the different stages of life, whether in your 20s, 30s, 40s. And today we're going to look at what that looks like for when you're in your 50s and beyond. But before we jump into just that part, Kathy, would you share with our audience a little bit about you? You say you don't refer to yourself as an expert, but from what I've seen based upon what you've lived and gone through and where you are now, I think you really are an expert. So would you just tell our audience a little bit about your story?
Okay, yeah, I definitely wouldn't call myself an expert, but I think we're all on a journey to learn and grow and do better. And so when we learn more, we do better. And that's definitely the case for me. My husband and I have been married since 1988. So we've gone through a lot together. And initially, when we started out in our marriage, we both had, jobs that paid good enough, and we just spent all our money and just, did all the things, had a lot of fun. But eventually we realized that we needed to change our ways, get out of debt, save for retirement. And so we had to overcome some challenges in order to do that. And I fell down the rabbit hole of learning about financial independence, which gave me some new ideas and tools to try to catch up retirement savings. Usually when you're behind, if you're older, you're thinking, at least we did, oh, we're going to have to work forever. Or I've had coworkers that I've shared some of this information with, and it's kind of overwhelming to think, oh, can I catch up my retirement savings? Oh, can I live off a little bit less and put more in savings? It's really hard to change your mindset, and it just takes a little bit of education and trying creative things, and suddenly you realize, oh yes, I can do it. um, so I've done a few different things with my career. I have a background in social work. When my daughter was little, I wanted to stay home with her, so I started a family childcare. But eventually I realized I needed to make more money, and so I got a second degree in speech therapy. And today I still work in social work, but I have a side job as a speech therapy assistant. So I'm able to try to use that income to catch up savings.
Yes. Now, you said, at first you and your husband, you guys were, because you're in California and the cost of living there is quite a bit different than what it is here in Oklahoma. You say you guys were just out living and doing, and what happened that caused you to say, it's time for me to make some changes?
Well, the main thing is that my husband and I were in a lot of debt, and we had a home, and we had so much credit card debt that we really struggled to pay all of our bills. And it was, that credit card game that you play where, oh, okay, I'll take some money out of this card and I'll pay off these bills, and it's just a vicious circle. And my husband's career was in a field that is often, there's often layoffs. He was a commercial cabinet maker, a carpenter, and he frequently had periods where he didn't work. And the debt that we had just became overwhelming. And in looking for a way to get out of it, I came across Dave Ramsey's radio show. And at first I thought, who is this crazy man? He's so rude. He's yelling at people. But the more I listened to it and listened to people do their debt-free screams, because people would come on the radio and they would say, we're debt-free, and they'd talk about how they did it. And they were getting out of debt in 2 and 3 years. And that really sparked a fire. So we started learning about that. We went through Financial Peace University. And we sold a bunch of stuff, and we just tried to do all the different things that we could to get out of debt. We did pay off a lot of debt. Um, my husband ended up having a medical emergency after being out of work again for quite a while. He just went back to work, and then he had a ruptured brain aneurysm. And so, although he tried to go back to work after that, he wasn't able to. He just had short-term memory loss that made it really difficult for him to be able to do any work. And so he wasn't going to work anymore. It does take a while. If someone has to get on disability like my husband does, it does take a while for Social Security to approve that. Usually you have to fight for it because you have to appeal a couple times. So that takes several years. And in the meantime, although we had paid a lot of debt off, we had just, too much. And so we ended up losing our home, which was, that's a lot of emotional baggage because it was a family home, and ended up having a bankruptcy. And, it's something it's a bad thing that seems like, oh, this is terrible, this is a failure, but all you can do is move forward. And so we just moved forward with, what we had and the new skills that we learned, and we stayed out of debt. And so we were able to change our money mindset so that we didn't go back into debt. And we were just able to move forward. And eventually we realized, okay, we don't have any more debt, but we're older. And how are we going to get some retirement savings? And one of the things that Dave Ramsey mentions in his baby steps is to save 15% of your income for retirement. But we realized if we save 15% of our income, it would take over 40 years to get a retirement, cushion. So I started looking for new ways to catch up retirement savings. And that's when I was searching online, and I found the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, which people call FIRE.
Yes.
And I read about all these people who were in their 30s who worked for 10 years and saved a bunch of money and invested it, and they were able to retire in 10 years in their 30s and 40s. And I thought, wow, is there any way an older person could do this? We have less time for compound interest, but could we do it in 10 years? And so that's what we tried to do. We learned more and more and started investing, and determined, you don't have to live in um, you don't have to live in a situation where you deprive yourself of everything fun, but
Right.
you can spend money on what's important to you, and then not spend money on things that really don't matter, so that you can save a little bit more. And
Now,
go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, and I'm sorry to hear about what happened with your husband and all that, but I'm glad to see that, he seems to be doing well now. Uh, were you two on the same page at the same time with the whole Dave Ramsey thing? Because I'll tell you, for me personally, I've been married 19 years now, and just here recently, my husband and I are more on the same page about finances and that sort of thing. Was your husband like automatically on board, or was there some resistance? What did that look like?
Oh, there was definitely resistance, because I would listen to this radio show every day, and I was being reinforced all the time. I found a local class that we could go to, and I said, let's go to this. And he's like, no way, I don't want to do that. And he's very outgoing and social, and I knew if I could just get him to the class that he'd be fine. So I told him, look, we'll go out to dinner. That's like the reward. And we'll just go this one time. And if you don't like it, we won't go anymore. But as soon as we got there and he started talking to people, then he enjoyed it. And so as we went through the class together, we did end up, being on the same page.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Because yeah, one of the big things is facing that initial fear, because change is I don't think change is fun for any of us. It's just that some of us are, we struggle with it a little bit more, but once we get over that initial unknown and what everything looks like, then that changes. So that's great. Now you have a daughter, correct?
Yes, our daughter's 23.
Okay, so as you're going through your financial journey, did you sit down and like talk to her about the things that were going on, or did she just kind of learn from watching, how you and your husband were interacting around the bills? What did that look like as far as passing on your knowledge to your daughter?
Um, our daughter's really good with money, and I think it's through osmosis in some ways. I had the Dave Ramsey radio show on every day, so she got to hear it even though she didn't like it. If we were driving in the car and it was time for the show, I wanted to hear it, and so she had to hear it. She definitely didn't like it, but she's really good with her money. And I think it's in part of watching, the challenges that we went through with our money, the fact that we had to move when she was in high school and lost this home that she was her childhood home that she loved. And, she's said things to me like, my friends never have any money. They all have jobs, they make more money than me, and they never have any money. But she has money because she's learned to save it and not spend it all at once. So she's definitely learned some good lessons. And we've talked with her more about money as we've gotten older, but it's challenging when, it's a young person, like, when our daughter was a teenager. She's a little more receptive now in her 20s, but when she was a teenager, she didn't really want to hear lessons from mom and dad necessarily.
Right.
Well, guys, I just want to hop in here just to uh, clarify what Miss Kathy Lee has said here. Her situation didn't change. It was her mindset that changed. The financial issues that were there, the health issues that were there, the emotional strains, uh, the feelings of losing, also not knowing what to expect, that fear added on top of that. She had made up her mind to learn the tools, learn the resources that she needed to turn her situation around. And I know that there's someone here listening to this podcast right now that's thinking she had some kind of magic formula and that things just magically worked in her favor, guys. The only thing that changed was her mindset. And when that mindset changed, everything else began to fall in place because she put herself then in an environment to learn. Now, Miss Kathy, how much did it cost you to listen to Dave Ramsey every day?
Of course, that was free.
Absolutely, guys. Did you hear that? It's just according to what you choose to do with your time to learn the skills and the resources that you need to shift your situation around. Now, we're here talking today about finances by life stages, 50 and beyond. So, to all my beautiful babes out there that is 50 and older, if you're in a financial situation to where you feel like you're drowning and things are getting out of control, it is not too late for you.
That's right. But I would say that if you're in debt, the first thing to do is try to get out of debt. And you can definitely use some tools to do that. We sold a bunch of stuff and I ended up going back to school to get more education because um, the main things that are going to drive getting out of debt and building wealth are your income and how much you can save, but your income is probably the biggest thing. So as a social worker, I didn't make a lot of money, and I had a sister-in-law and some friends who were speech therapists, and I saw that they made 3 times as much as I made, and they were doing what looked like playing with kids, which is what I had been doing in my childcare business. And so I looked for the least expensive program I could find, and I took I only had to, because I already had a bachelor's degree, I only had to take a certain number of courses to get the main core courses for speech therapy. And I did that online while I was working. And so I was able to make that switch to have another job that would bring in some money. So that did definitely help.
So tell me something. Once you started being more intentional and started investing into like your retirement, did you start with like half your paycheck, or did you start a little bit at a time? And this is just for some of the listeners, because there are a lot of people who the whole investing in the stock market and investing in their retirement account, it's a mystical type something, and they're scared of it. What advice would you give to someone who may be looking at it from that standpoint? It's like they know that they should be doing something, but they're afraid to take this first step. What would you advise them?
I think that is how we all feel. I definitely felt that way. Um, and I've been working at my current social work job for maybe 6 years. And when I started working there, it's a county job. So it has all kinds of benefits, all kinds of opportunities to save. But I didn't even sign up for anything. And in past jobs, I never signed up because I thought, oh, I need all my money. I can't possibly have extra to save for retirement. But I knew I needed to do it. So I finally signed up for like $10 every 2 paychecks. And I just, trusted the person who was in charge of that to put me in some fund of where the money would go. And so that's like $5 a week. And that was when I was just starting to learn more about the financial independence movement. And I started reading more books, reading more blogs, and I realized, okay, I definitely didn't feel $5 a week. And so as I would get a raise or, um, a little bit of time would go by, I would say, okay, I'm going to increase that. And finally, I realized I'm just going to have to really bite the bullet and make sure I'm maxing out those retirement accounts. And one of the things that was a huge benefit for us is that working for a county government, and this is true with federal government, other state employers, and some teachers' jobs. There's a retirement plan called the 457B, and that program has a catch up for people who are over 50. If you're behind in your savings already for retirement, the HR person can help you calculate how much more you could catch up. But the government allows you to divert your income, so it's going to be before taxes, 39,000 a year, and you have to make a commitment to do this for 3 years in a row to catch your savings up. So at the time I thought, okay, I'm really scared of this, because if I divert, if my paychecks are cut down and I'm, diverting 39,000 a year, my paychecks are going to be like $500 every 2 weeks. But I thought, you know what, I could try it. And if it doesn't work out, I can stop it. So we did try it. And even though my husband wasn't working by that time, he had qualified for disability income and he was able to retire early through his union because he was disabled. So we had that income. Plus, we had my income from my side job. So with all those different income streams, I was able to divert that much money into retirement, and it did really help.
That is awesome. So you start at $5 a week. I think if we skip a drive-through window once, because we spend more than that at the drive-through.
That's true.
And if you're just now joining us on the Money and Mindset podcast, we're here today with Miss Kathy Lee, the creator of the Baby Boomer Super Saver blog, and she's given us information on finances if you're in your 50s and beyond. Was there anything else that you would like to share with our audience today, Kathy? Some other nuggets of advice for someone who's, say, early 50s, mid 50s, and they're like, hey, I'm ready to get started to do something, but I just don't know what.
Oh yes, that sounds like a great lead in, because the 457 plan is not available to everybody. I mentioned that it's available through some government employers and teachers, but the majority of people don't have that, and like the majority of people don't even have pensions anymore. So it's really up to you to save for your retirement. And if you don't have a 401k or some type of retirement plan at your job, you still have access to tax deferred retirement savings or tax advantage retirement savings, because you can save some money in an IRA. And you can set up an IRA at your local bank or at a place like Vanguard or Merrill Lynch or something like that online. And you're allowed, depending on your, if you're over 50, you can donate a little bit more. I mean, not donate it, but it's for your retirement. So if you put money in your IRA, your individual retirement account, under 50, I think it's about 6,000 a year. And if you're over 50, it's 7,000 a year. So you're allowed to save even more at this tax advantage rate. If you put it in a regular IRA, then you're not going to be taxed on that money this year, and it grows tax. It's growing tax free, and the money wasn't taxed when you put it in. But eventually, when you take the money out, you'll pay taxes on it. But hopefully, you'll be in a lower tax bracket because you'll be retired. With a Roth IRA, you pay the tax now when you put the money in, but all the interest grows tax free. And that way, when you take it out, both the money and the interest, you're never taxed on it. So that is a nice way to help your retirement. And then if you're really able to pull some different levers, if you put money in your retirement account now in a regular IRA, and then later when you leave your job, maybe you have a few years where you've built up a cash cushion, and so you can live off that cash cushion for a couple years. And during those first couple years of retirement, you can slowly move money from your regular IRA to your Roth IRA. And so you pay a little bit of tax while you're in that lower tax bracket, and move that money so that it will be tax-free forever. So there's a lot of creative things you can do with your money. Um, I would say, look not only at saving as much as you can, but also look at your expenses. And like I said, you don't have to live a life of deprivation, but you can look at the three things that we spend the most money on, which is transportation, housing, and food, and see what you can do to play around with those numbers to find a way to lower those a little bit. Whether you know, do take in, you might take in Airbnb guests, or you might have a room that you rent out, um, things like that. There's a lot of creative things to do.
Yes, thank you. Though that is good advice. Now, I know me personally, I won't be taking in any guests, but I know I've heard many of people who have done it and it works for them. And that's another thing with personal finance. It's all about learning and figuring out what works best for you and your situation. Well, I think we're going to wrap up this episode. Kathy, I really do appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much. And you'll be hearing from us again, I assure you. And I will include the link to your blog post in the show notes. So if there's anyone out there who's looking for some encouragement and creative ways to prepare for retirement and beyond, be sure to check out Kathy's blog site.
Thank you so much. I really love being on your show. It was great to talk with you.
Thank you.
Until next time, I'm Anntricia Bray Smith.
Okay.
And I'm Sheryka Alford.